Okay, Gold Derby fans, we are here today to talk about Best Comedy Series at the 2018 Emmy Awards. The good news for every studio and every network is that Veep is not back. It's coming back later. So this year will be open for Best Actress, and what do they win every year? Best Casting, and they always get in for writing and directing. It's the three-time winner of Best Comedy Series, and it's gone. Also gone this year is Master of None. So these shows will come back later, but they're just sitting out this period. So basically, we need to fill these slots. And what's going to fill this? Is it going to be new shows? Is it going to be revivals? I'm here with Chris Beachum, Daniel Montgomery, Joyce Eng, Paul Sheehan. I am Marcus James Dixon. And Daniel, I'm going to come to you first because you have this interesting story about how there's a revival from each decade that is in contention here.
Yeah, this is probably the first Emmy race. I can't imagine any previous Emmy race where there are potential nominees from the last 4 decades. Roseanne originally premiered in the 1980s. Will and Grace originally started in the 90s. Curb Your Enthusiasm and Modern Family started in the 2000s, and everything else started in the 2010s. So, and we could potentially have nominees from each of those decades if Roseanne, Will and Grace, Modern Family, and any number of new and returning shows get in. So,
and you could throw in One Day at a Time. That's from the 70s.
Oh, that's true.
Wow, yeah.
The only real connection it has to that, but it's a big connection, is Norman Lear, who's been all over the place in the past year.
Yeah, we need to get that, we need to work on the 60s and 50s now. Let's get those, I Love Lucy, revival in the works.
No, Paul would quit show business if they did a revival of I Love Lucy without any of those people.
Some of the nominees from last year that are back are Atlanta, Blackish, Modern Family, which is something you mentioned, Silicon Valley, and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Kimmy Schmidt's doing something interesting this year because of Tina Fey's new musical Mean Girls. They weren't able to produce the whole season in time, so they're cutting it in half to be eligible for the Emmys. So only half of the episodes will air during this period, and the other half will air a little bit later.
The odd thing about Atlanta is it hasn't competed anywhere since last year's Emmys because they aired no episodes during 2017. It did not compete at the Globes or SAG or any of the Guild Awards. So we're seeing the new season right now, but it's not been competitive anywhere since last year's Emmys. So it's been a long break at the awards circuit for that show.
This is the show. I think it's going to build in nominations. I think if you're not picking Brian Tyree Henry for supporting actor, you're crazy. I think he's getting in. I think Donald Glover is probably going to win again. Writing, directing, this is going to be a huge
I think
show.
Brian got a huge boost last year when he got in and guest for This Is Us. That was like his consolation nomination because he didn't get into comedy supporting. So.
Well, don't Lakeith Stanfield was in Get Out, so his profile has boosted too from that show.
Mm-hmm. And Paul, what about some of these new shows that could potentially?
What do you mean, the new old shows or the
new shows?
I want to talk about the old shows. I want to talk about Roseanne. Everyone's hyped for Roseanne coming back. Is it its time finally at the Emmys for comedy series, especially with it? To me, it's so interesting because it seems it's the complete antithesis of Veep, right? Veep is such a it inside the swamp, right? And I guess Roseanne is that she's made a big deal about the fact that the Connor family probably voted for Trump. And in fact, I think that's in the first episode, Roseanne versus her sister over Trump versus Hillary. Do you think it'll resonate with Emmy voters now the way it didn't 30 years ago?
Well, John Goodman and Laurie Metcalf, you can mark in stone. John Goodman, I think, got in every year for the original series, and he's been an Emmy favorite. Did he miss one? He never won. I know he didn't win, but his profile has boosted more, even since Roseanne, with all of his movies. And I just think he's a favorite, and he's like a William H. Macy kind of a actor in Hollywood, just somebody everybody loves. I can't imagine he doesn't get in. Laurie Metcalf coming off an Oscar nomination and a Tony win. She won 3 times for the show already. Now, Roseanne herself can be very divisive, not even talking about politics, just Some people like her, some people don't like her. That probably hurt on comedy series, for a long time. So I don't know about her. I've got her predicted to get in. I've got the show predicted to get in.
And what about, and then Will and Grace? I mean, they loved Will and Grace, right? One of the only 3 shows that the 4 main members of the cast all won Emmys. The show won an Emmy once. Does everyone? And it's done well ratings wise. Oh, I will say about you're talking about I Love Lucy and the likes of that. Do you know the colorized episodes that CBS shows of I Love Lucy and then of Dick Van Dyke outrate most of these shows we're talking about? Just more people are interested in watching those shows than these. But they are watching Will and Grace. I mean, it's done well. Does everyone think that's got a really strong shot?
I think it's getting in. I think I have all 4 of the actors getting in. And it's going to really do well with the guest categories, too. It's going to get a lot of people in there. I wasn't really a big fan of the old Will and Grace, which is interesting because I love the new season. It's just so good. It's on fire every week. It makes me laugh out loud. It's one of the rare shows. I'm not a very laughy type of person, but I laugh when I watch that show.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're in kind of like new Emmy waters. It's hard to know, and we had these same issues at the Golden Globes and the SAG Awards to a certain extent. How much will they embrace the revivals? Will and Grace had kind of mixed results at the Globes. It got comedy and actor. It didn't win either. So like a decade after these shows ended, or 2 decades after these shows ended, will they be excited to see them again, or have they moved on? It'll be interesting to see which, we always talk about how the Emmys love reruns and repeat nominations, but how far back are they really interested in going? It'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure if I'm sure both shows will get at least a couple of actors in, but they could be drastically underperform, or they could drastically overperform. We could see, especially with Veep out of the way, that's 17 comedy nominations across the board that are available for other shows potentially, at least. So we could, it's a big question mark. So that's me being entirely non-committal about it.
I think they all have a better shot of getting in their actors first before comedy series.
What about, you're talking about and then I guess when they turn their back on you, it's rare to sort of come back. I think about Big Bang. So do you think Young Sheldon, which is sort of, kind of a modern day Wonder Years, which one, I mean, does that have a chance? Single camera versus, multi-camera comedies have of late had a hard time getting in. So do you think Young Sheldon, it's well received? It's certainly well rated.
Yeah, the viewership is there, and Big Bang Theory got in a lot of times. Let me check real fast. It got in
not the first year though. I don't even think Jim Parsons got in the first year.
It got in for 4 of its 27 seasons, and Jim Parsons won a lot. So it's possible that this show has a fan base.
Annie Potts, I think, is the biggest push for them because she's that over the top, mother, grandmother in this case, that we've seen do well at the Emmys, whether it's Doris Roberts or others. And speaking of somebody like that, Rita Moreno, who's got the Emmy, the Oscar, the Grammy, and the Tony, is way over the top on One Day at a Time. And she's another one like Norman Lear that's been just all over the place in the past year. Award shows, variety programs, presenting at the Oscars. I have a feeling she's going to be doing a lot of publicity over in May and June when ballots are going out this year. I don't recall her doing that last year.
Another revival, which is not really a revival, is Curb Your Enthusiasm. It took 6 years off, but it was never it never ended. It just was on a long vacation. And this is something that got in at the SAG Awards, right, for Ensemble and for Larry David. So
yeah, I have that getting in. It's gotten 7 nominations. I feel like it's a lot cooler than Roseanne and even Will and Grace. And even though it's never won any major awards, I feel like they still love it, and it's kind of insidery that it's enough to get them in.
I'm looking in our prediction center right now, and the little logo of it that Chris picked for our prediction center. it's Larry David kind of like, and it reminds me of Jackie Gleason in The Honeymooners. And sort of Jackie Gleason was famously snubbed by the TV Academy. So, maybe he needs to change his logo. That's.
I think of all the revivals, that's the safest.
Yeah.
The only year it ever missed on comedy series was its first, and nobody really had seen it early on. Larry David, it does have that cool factor. Now, there's a show that's not going to have any campaigning from anybody personally, I don't think. I mean, Ted Danson might do something for Good Place and Curb, but I just don't foresee anybody else doing much. Certainly Larry won't.
You know who could win for Curb is Lin-Manuel Miranda in the guest category. He was very, very good. Played a very outlandish version of himself.
One hopes.
Yeah.
I think Curb is actually a threat to win, honestly, best comedy series, because it's interesting is the dynamics with Veep out of the way. Curb is going to be along with Silicon Valley, the HBO's big pushes. And I feel like Curb and Veep have a sort of similar comedy sensibilities. So if those voters migrate somewhere, it could, we could end up seeing more of them go to Curb than to Atlanta or, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
And Chris,
so what about Mrs. Maisel?
Chris, what can we tell people real quick about Arrested Development? Because it's still a big question mark, right?
Yeah, we can't tell anything. I mean, not that we know anything. They don't know themselves, or at least Netflix is not admitting to knowing. The thing is, I put it in the prediction center, and it's got a lot of acting people. I mean, the whole cast is well known now, and so it's got a lot of slots within the prediction center. The reason I put it in, unlike some shows that really didn't begin production until late, or A Master of None was never announced as even coming back ever. Arrested started shooting last July, August. We were talking to Tony Hale at an Emmy party last year, and he was already shooting. So they've been done shooting and probably editing since, earlier, at the very least, editing January, February of this year. So it's more now a matter of, does Netflix, they probably are watching it. They're making a decision on, is it worthy of an Emmy campaign? Last time it disappointed. So that's going to decide whether it's coming back in May or not, basically.
Oh, no. I was just thinking about Mrs. Maisel. I mean, I know it's sort of, they'll have to get dispensation from the TV Academy to compete as a comedy, but...
I think they're going to be fine on comedy. That was allowed in comedy at every single guild, and won the Globe, obviously, where they don't really care in terms of what genre something is. On the TV side, at least. I think I've got it in first. I think I've either got it in first or second right now. I think that and Atlanta are the ones to beat.
I have it winning too. I also have the actress winning, Rachel Brosnahan. It was only 8 episodes, which is kind of short. But didn't Mad Men win with the short season? Breaking Bad won with the short season. So
yeah,
I don't think that matters
seasons.
anymore.
But those were also their final. Like Breaking Bad was split. So and Mad Men was just nominated for, they didn't win, but.
It's interesting with, we have a situation with Atlanta and Mrs. Maisel, where a lot of times with comedy series Emmys lately, you either win on your first year and you keep winning like 30 Rock and Modern Family, or you have to wait, a few years to win like Veep did. And so now you have Atlanta, which is the show that had to wait, and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is the show that's coming in fresh and could just win right off the bat. So it'll be interesting to see which, if they go to one of those trends or the other.
It's also crazy because we've only had 3 shows win comedy series in the last 10 years. So it's like...
And I don't know that I'd say Atlanta waited. They waited on comedy series, but I mean, they got a couple of big prizes with Donald Glover and directing.
Well, still not winning comedy series in your first year is, it's sort of like that trend of they'll make you wait for it, or they'll just give it to you right away and just keep giving it.
Right. I don't foresee that being a long-term show, though. I mean, it's going to be like we talked about Master of None, where I could see him doing, this might be it, the second season. They might do a third, but I don't see him going beyond that. He's just got too many opportunities.
They're just, both of them are just dependent on whatever the auteur wants to do. It's like Curb. It's like whenever they want to come back, they'll let, like Netflix and FX will just let them come back whenever. Like they want to stay in that business as long as they want. But they're not going to force them like a timeline to like make a new season.
Yeah, it's not like a network show where they have 7-year contracts or something. They're probably just doing it year by year. FX probably wants them to stick around for 10 years, like Modern Family, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
Anyone have Modern Family getting back in?
I'm going to have Modern Family getting in until it does not get in. It is. I still enjoy it. I know that I'm probably one of the only ones, but it's such a good.
One big warning sign is it just really didn't appear anywhere in the guilds this year. Did not, for the first time ever, did not even have a single actor or the cast at SAG. So those are some warning signs. I don't have it in at the moment. I also don't have Arrested in or any of its actors, just because I don't. It's not easy to. It's hard to figure out what's going to fall out, and since we don't know about Arrested for certain, I just don't want to taking up slots on my list until we hear. But
Modern Family, it has 8 nominations now, which is tied with Frasier with 8. If it gets one more, it'll be tied with All in the Family at 9. And then 2 shows have 11, Cheers and MASH. So it's already getting
Frasier, though, that won those 5, and then I think it made it a 6th and 7th, and then never came back. So they do get rid of some shows.
Well, because there's so many good shows.
Well, there's one other new show that we haven't talked about yet that I think we need to watch out for, because I think it's one of the only shows, or one of the only new shows at least, that got in absolutely everywhere, or almost everywhere, during the award season, and that's Glow on Netflix. Alison Brie is the only comedy actress who got in at the Critics' Choice Awards, SAG Awards, Golden Globes. It really, despite premiering way back last summer, it really held on for those fall and winter awards, and I think they might be looking good for at least the nomination for Best Comedy Series, and I think certainly Alison Brie and Mark Maron for acting nominations.
And they'll follow that cycle that we've seen work for some shows, where they've already shot the 2nd season, and while they haven't announced a premiere date, I would imagine it's probably June or July. So that's going to help on a cycle like Orange is the New Black, did for a long time, and Ray Donovan, spent a summer show. That having all of your promotional materials for the new show out there for the new season, while voters are voting, they don't often remember exactly which season they're voting for. So that could help it out, even though you're right, it would have been a year.
And there's Smilf. Smilf got in at the Golden Globes. I bet it was 2nd place to win there, and Frankie Shaw is a really strong contender for actress, and Rosie O'Donnell for supporting actress. She has this very, very this physical transformation, which they love. These voters just eat that up.
Yeah. Well, it's
trying to look down my list here. I don't see anything. I mean, there were some last year. A Pamela Adlon on Better Things. Got in kind of surprisingly on lead actress. Is that a show that builds? Is that a show that improves on its nominations this year? One of my favorites, not a new show, a 2nd-year show, The Good Place. I don't understand why it doesn't get more attention anywhere. That's one of the most creative shows on television. And it's got, the 2 leads are both very well-known people, Ted Danson and Kristen Bell. That's a couple of others. Get Shorty is one that Epix is pushing really, really hard, and it deserves to at least be mentioned here, based off the movie and the book, from many years ago. And then TBS has their first real contender here, along with Search Party, a 2nd-year show, The Last OG with Tracy Morgan and Tiffany Haddish. That, if that takes off with critics, I could see that having some potential.
Yeah, and TBS, has sort of been gradually building. Like, they just made a huge impact last year with Full Frontal in the variety race, so they could start moving into the comedy race.
Well, it's fun. Well, we got 4 months before nominations, so I'm sure we'll be talking many more times.